Now we are ready to talk about the basic network topology. Assume that we have 6 network devices with different IP addresses and subnet masks. These network devices will be personal computers, laptops, tablets, network printers, network scanners, IP phones, servers, smartphones, switches, routers, modems, and other connected devices. All these connected devices have different types of NIC cards, as wireless or wired. And all these NIC cards have IP addresses and MAC addresses for connecting the network. Like IP addresses, subnet masks have also 32 bits. In the examples that we have done, the values of 24 bits are 1 and the value of 8 bits are 0. And because of these 24 bits, we can also use /24 for short representation of subnet masks. When we look at the example of 192.168.40.16/24, we can easily understand that 192.168.40.16 is the IP address, and 192.168.40.0 is the network address of the connected device D2. A router is a kind of gate controller and data routing device that communicates between internet and your home or office network. If the data packet that generated by your computer will not be sent to the internet, the router prevents this data packet sending to the internet. In this case, the data packet remains inside the local area network. This means the data packet can only be used by the other 5 computers in the network, as the network address of data packet is 192.168.40.0. If the data packet that generated by your computer will be sent to the internet, the router sends this data packet to the internet. This means the data packet is not for the other 5 computers in the LAN. If the data packet comes from the internet is the response of sending data packet, the router receives this data packet and sends it to the relevant computer in LAN. If the data packets come from the internet is not related with another connected device in LAN, the router does not receive these data packets into LAN. In other words, the router directs data packets and acts as a filter that prevents the passage of irrelevant packets that do not belong to your computer network. The router controls IP addresses and MAC addresses when routing the data packets. Since router prevents the passing of irrelevant different LAN packets, it also performs as a kind of data filter. On the other hand, the switch controls only the MAC addresses when sending the data packets which connected to the ports on it. Since it also prevents the passing of irrelevant packets for connected devices, it also performs as a kind of filtering for inside LAN network packets. Now we can start to examine these 6 IP addresses one by one. For device 1, IP address is 192.168.40.1/24. For device 2, IP address is 192.168.40.16/24. For device 3, IP address is 192.168.40.17/24. For device 4, IP address is 192.168.40.18/24. For device 5, IP address is 192.168.40.19/24. And for device 6, IP address is 192.168.40.20/24. As you see that all devices have the same network address as 192.168.40.0. A switch has its own MAC address table and all connected devices register their MAC addresses in the table. The switch looks up the MAC addresses of the connected devices and sends the data packet to this computer. In other words, the switch sends the data packet only over the port which connects to the MAC address of the target computer. Other computers do not receive this data packet. So, switch also prevents the passing of unrelated packets for connected devices and performs as a kind of filtering for inside LAN network packets. On the screen, you can see the visual topology that we made in the previous slides. It's important to get a topology of network and showing the definitions on this topology like IP addresses, MAC addresses, device names, and etc. By taking this topology as an example, you can deduce the LAN structure you use in your home. The access point used for the wireless connection in the topology may not be available in your network, because for this the Wi-Fi feature of your router can be used. Public IP address is assigned to your network router by your Internet Service Provider ISP that used for accessing directly over the Internet. Your connected device has a private IP address that is assigned to your LAN, but when your device connects to the Internet through your router, private IP address remains hidden and you have a connection through your router's public IP address. Public IP address and external IP address can be used interchangeably, and private IP address and internal IP address can also be used interchangeably. Devices connect to the same LAN communicate with each other without connecting to the internet, and they do not use the public IP addresses. Private IP addresses are traceable by another devices on your local network. Public IP addresses are traceable by another devices on the internet network. The router performs the exchange between these public and private IP addresses. Let's talk about the private IP addresses of our LAN, and you can see which IP address belongs to which device in the topology on the screen. For the router, IP address is 192.168.40.1/24, and network address is 192.168.40.0. For the access point, IP address is 192.168.40.16/24, and network address is 192.168.40.0. For the server, IP address is 192.168.14.17/24, and network address is 192.168.40.0. For the PC, IP address is 192.168.40.80/24, and network address is 192.168.40.0. For the laptop, IP address is 192.168.40.19/24, and network address is 192.168.40.0. For the tablet, IP address is 192.168.40.20/24, and network address is 192.168.40.0. We have one public IP address for accessing the internet. For the router, public IP address is 10.156.47.189. In this way, you can create a topology for the LAN you use in your home or office. And by this way, you will know the device is connected to your network. As you can see, the router device is critical here. For this reason, I recommend you to learn the features of your router device. I will tell you about the basic features of almost all router devices. The username and password used for the management of your router comes as standard depending on your brand. Learn how to change your password and do not let anyone else change the password. The SSID name and password used for the wireless connection of your router are standard depending on the brand. Learn how to change your SSID name and password. Do not let anyone else changing the password. Learn how to do MAC address filtering on your router. MAC address filtering is basically a process that defines which MAC addresses can be connected to your router. At this stage, depending on the capabilities of your router, you may need to create two different MAC address lists for wireless and wired connections. Please pay attention to this. For the first step, it may be sufficient to do MAC address filtering only for wireless connections. Please be careful when performing wireless MAC address filtering. First, add the MAC address of your computer that you use for configuration. Otherwise, since the MAC address of the computer you are using is not defined, your connection will be interrupted and your access to the router will be lost. In order to get rid of such situations, your router needs to be reset according to the factory settings. Be sure to learn how to make the factory reset settings of your router. Make a note of MAC address information of computers, laptops, tablets, smartphones, cameras, IP phones, and other smart home systems that will be constantly connected to your router. Add these MAC addresses to the allowed MAC addresses or whitelist section on your router. Today, many routers have the guest SSID feature to be used for temporary connections. You can use this SSID for your guests and other temporary connections. These subjects that I mentioned here are the most basic issues that should be considered when using a router. As you get to know your computer network, you can continue to use different features. In addition, it may be beneficial to take different measures according to the characteristics of the connected devices. I would also like to remind you that such precautions may be different depending on your purpose of using the internet and your level of technical knowledge.